Aboye. It's so beautiful out here. I'm going to apologize for the breeze that's coming through, but I just was taking a walk and I realized it was important to share a brief lesson on the significance of understanding Yoruba civilization as a whole when we're trying to really grasp the some of the particular protocols or practices that um, are part of Ifa, right? Now, when I say Ifa, I'm talking about um, the Ifa discipline or institution that is, embedded in so many lineages in West Africa, right? I want to make the distinction between Ifa as a specific spiritual discipline within Yoruba spirituality, which is distinguished from Shango or Batala or Oshun, etc. Right? Each Orisha society has a slightly different culture, and all of them together fit into Yoruba culture and Yoruba civilization by extension. So, when we talk about Ifa, it's important to take that into consideration and understand that there's, from the big picture, there's Nigeria, and then there's Yoruba land, and then amongst the Yorubas themselves, there are different groups of Orisha devotees, and they're not centralized into one single thing. Each of them operates with total autonomy from the other, and they overlap and collaborate with one another deeply. But Shango is Shango, and they have their own lineage and their own hierarchy. Obatala, Ogun, Yemoja, Oshun, or Romila. Each of them has their own system within the system. They got their own jurisdiction within that system. Let me put it back better. They have their own jurisdiction. They are the owners of certain mysteries and certain practices. That's their secret, right? This is their knowledge, it's their wisdom. And Ifa is one of those, right? One of those disciplines, and a deity who is the owner of a certain set of secrets and mysteries and practices. So by the time we get here into the West, one of the things that's very controversial, recurring controversy surrounds this issue over and over and over and over and over, and it is the role of women in Ifa. Okay, and interestingly enough, over the years, we don't seem to be getting much closer to a definitive breakdown and articulation of, like, this is what's going on. Here's what Ifa says about the subject. Here's how it plays down in all these different places and regions, and these are the equivalencies and these are the divergencies. And it should be a pretty simple and straightforward conversation, quite honestly, but it isn't, for whatever reason. But what I see as I observe the conversation, and to the extent that I participate in the conversation, what I see is we're trying to draw all of our conclusions, based on an analysis that excludes Yoruba civilization. We've taken the Yoruba out of our equation. We're just going from Ifa to Western values. This is how the people do it, the different Ifa people do it, and when we juxtapose that against Western values, then it looks like this and that and the other, which doesn't make any sense, because Ifa doesn't fit into a Western framework of civilization. It doesn't belong to a Western social psychology. It's not a Western idea. It's a totally implanted idea that comes from the Yoruba people. So you got to look at, where does Ifa fit into Yoruba ethos and values and worldview. And to do that, it helps to look at some of the other social and economic institutions of the Yoruba people. Like the Orisha traditions are all based on apprenticeship and vocational training. And Yoruba vocational training is 99% governed and dictated by gender-specific trades and vocational training. So if you look at the divinities who own the trades, Ogun owns iron working, blacksmithing, wood carving, etc. Army, soldier, hunter. All those belong to the Ogun families. Shango families own something else. Obatala families own something else. And Ifa families own something else. In terms of vocation, right? Olokun families own bead making. Obalufon families own weaving. Obatala families own sculpting with clay. For example, they own bone setting. You go through all of the different divinities, they tend to own certain kinds of vocations. But within those vocations, they are broken down by gender. So men do some vocations, right? 99.99% of the blacksmiths are men. Likewise, the wood carvers, 99.9% of them are men, right? Then where you have some trades, some vocations, like weaving, that men and women do, then you would still find that there's a men's loom and there's a women's loom. And the men's loom makes a certain fabric with certain purposes. Women's loom makes another fabric which is used for another set of purposes. And you can imagine who uses which fabric. Okay? So what you get is, when you understand the apprenticeship model, you get a different look. Oh, all the Orisha people are a part of an economy, right? And this is how people are moving in the economy also. So that will help you. That will help you to understand and evaluate how things are being divided by gender. They are being divided by gender. And you have to understand why they're being divided by gender, and what the quality that is created by that division. Why have they done it like this for 1,000,000 years? Literally. Or why have they done it like this for 10,000 years? 7,000 years? Closer to 7. I think it's like 7,000 to 8,000 years that we've got some sort of cultural remnants of the Yoruba people. So let's say, 5,000 to 7,000 years they've been doing something in a certain way. Why? Okay, why? And you gotta examine it. At least entertain the idea that the Yoruba people know what they're doing. There's wisdom in the way that they structure things. There's wisdom in the way that they organize their families. There's wisdom in the way that they structure the palace. There's a wisdom in the way that they ordered their religious hierarchy with the chieftaincies and their functions, and it's done with some wisdom in mind. There's a reason and a purpose for why things are done that way. It's important that you understand those things before you try to bend them and twist them into what you want them to be, living in urban America or someplace else, right? Because we're not trying to get the tradition to validate and validate and kind of continue to perpetuate our Western worldview and our Western way of being, where we're trying to re-Africanize. We're trying to capitalize upon the ancestral memory that our untold generations have given us, some profound wisdom and a way to solve all the basic human problems, and we're going back to them to ask their advice. So before we start telling them that we know more than they do, we should first at least seek to understand the breadth, BEREADTH, of their knowledge systems. We should at least point our attention somewhere in the direction of, well, why did they do anything like this anyway? There seems to be a pattern here. Why did they do it this way? How did they decide upon this for thousands and thousands of generations? Okay? That's important for us to grow, to learn, to develop, to transform, and then make the kinds of decisions that we want to make that would change the world that we live in today. We don't want to impose the shortcomings of the Western world onto our traditional mindset. Even, you know what I'm saying? We don't want to prioritize Western values over African indigenous values. We may want to, use Western values to influence and refine and improve what we already have, of course. But we're not just blindly imposing Western values and ideas and agendas onto our indigenous knowledge systems. That doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. Okay? So I want to invite everybody to do a little bit more research. Start looking at Yoruba apprenticeship models and vocational training and craft organization in different Yoruba kingdoms, and start to draw more connections between what the crafts and the vocations and the production system is all about. How does that all relate to Orisha? Come on now. You want to really grow into something big. You want to see how this thing can have a real impact on changing our lives and improving our condition. Start looking at the way that Orisha lifestyle is tied to the organization of a civilization. All right. So much love to you all. Blessings and eternal wisdom to you all. I look forward to hearing from all of the good people regarding the expansion of our perspective on Orisha lifestyle. Abo Raboye, Abo Shishe.